Hello everyone and welcome to the fourth masterclass on process fundamentals. Hope you have enjoyed the ride and welcome to those people who are joining us today for the first time. My name is Marius Buerta. I'm the WorkPool product architect and I'll be hosting the session today. For those of you who don't know, this is session number 4 in the process fundamentals series. And the idea today is to basically take all the things we've learned, all the things that we've seen, put it into practice and look at some of the reports and also bespoke development that people have done with that. So it should be an interesting ride and some showcase of solutions that you might not have thought of or might not have seen in the past. And yeah, I think cause for celebration for many of those clients who can celebrate the fact that they've successfully implemented processes and solutions that work. The first part of the session is going to be focused on the standard WorkPool reports, 1 or 2 custom reports, and then we're going to jump right into showing you what you can do when it comes to WorkPool and system integration. So where WorkPool is the orchestrator, if you like, between different systems, how you can automate things already, how you could have been automating them for years, the bulk processing and document generation capabilities of WorkPool, how people are using process overlays to make their lives easier. Similarly, multifunctional start screens, how people are using WorkPool to make people do what they're supposed to do when they kick off a process, dashboards, and then special web forms. Yeah, we have a lot of examples. I'm trying to cover as many bases as I can. So hopefully you can take the bits and pieces from here and then apply it to your own environment. So on the process reporting side, you have a few options that exist as a standard. I'm going to show you some of the standard user-specific reports and then system admin reports, and then also what you can do with the API and just general kind of themes or filters that people often use on processes that you can see if that will work for you. So jumping right in, if you go to the task section and you click on reporting, you will access the process reporting section. We'll be adding more functions to this as we go. But basically, this is for a user to be able to see all the processes that are currently part of their scope. So scope could be they're doing any specific tasks on the process. It could be that they're managing the process, could be that they're the process owner. So whatever the reason might be, this process is currently landing on your workflow, and it will tell you a little bit of information. So how many processes you've got, how many of them are currently active, also how many of them are outside the goal period. So if you're doing monthly bookkeeping, maybe having a 61% fail rate is not too bad, but if you're doing, let's say, VAT where there's penalties, then obviously that's quite a significant consequence in terms of penalties to be paid. Tasks active will show you how many individual actions are currently happening on those processes. And as we know, you can have tasks happening in parallel. So it could be multiple actions being taken on a process. So it's not abnormal for this to be higher than the processes that are active. It will show you how many processes are overdue or tasks are overdue in there, so you can jump in and have a look. Expired next actions, those are important to us because that means that there's no reminder or next action configured. And then even more important to that, if a task has been assigned and it's late and it hasn't even been opened yet. So just basic dashboard to at a glance show you your processes in your life or your scope. And then you can also click on this icon on the top right-hand side and then expand the scope to include other people in your team. If you're a team leader, you can select your team members and then have the same view on that with updated statistics. Clicking on any of these processes, you can drill down and it will then show you your performance and actions on each step in that process. So these would be the flows, as we know. The assigned to will indicate the expression or the rule that dictates who will be doing the work. And then you can look at the estimates based on what you think and then what actually happens in practice. So estimated lifespan might be 2 hours, but the average lifespan is less than, say a couple of minutes only. So is that a fair estimation, or maybe you're overestimating? And the more data you've got, the more tasks you add. Obviously, the better your quality of data would be. And this is quite useful in terms of costing services, having a look at steps that might be taking longer than expected, and considering how you can break that up and reverse engineer or update your process accordingly. This the SLA overdue column over here is slightly different to overdue. So overdue looks at the date on the task, but the due date can be updated by the owner. So this one is actually going to look at the rule that you configured on the flow and say, but if the flow said 4 days, then the SLA is 4 days. It doesn't matter if someone moves on that date. And you can see here where people might be dropping the ball, and similarly in terms of expired next actions and an estimated effort. So again, it's a starting point for you to dive in and see where there might be issues, or where you might want to automate, or where you might want to improve some of the processes. If you're a system administrator, you do get access to a few extra reports and more information. You go to tasks and task administration. If you don't know, there's a global task statistics, which is just a very simple high-level view on what's happening inside your system. It shows you all the active tasks, but if you scroll down, you'll see that there's also active processes. So in our WorkPool, I get an email every morning that gives me the current status, and it helps me to plan and know whenever there's a spike in the tasks. And obviously, it's good for us to just have awareness and can plan accordingly. So very simple, but useful in terms of, if you keep your eye on it, to know when things might be going out of hand. If you've attended the previous sessions, might know this link quite well, the Process Designer. From here, you can access your process library, click on a process, and then that will open up all the versions that you have attached to that. In WorkPool, we do allow you to maintain and manage process versions individually, because when you make a change, you're changing the rules, adding a step, or changing attributes, you want to be able to measure that against previous processes and see that you're actually successful. So on the right-hand side, there's 2 columns. For each process version, you can click either on the summary report, or you can click on a detailed report. So if you click on the summary report, WorkPool will have a look at all the instances of that process. It will show you how many exist in the system, how many might currently be active, and then also how many are being completed, which you can then drill down on, and it will give you all the source data if you want to extract that and use that in Excel or for some analytics. At the bottom, it will show you the average time to complete a process. So if this is a verification process, 3 hours sounds great. But if this was 2 weeks or 1 minute, that wouldn't make sense. So it gives you a global average. And again, here is useful for operations and planning when you're considering different steps in a process. And then it takes each and every step in the process, looks at the estimated lifespan if you configure that, the actual lifespan, so you can compare whether it's on track or not, and then gives you also the average time logged on each one. So again, this is very useful to understand where time is going on each one of these steps. We do recommend that this report is only pulled after hours if you have thousands of processes, because it's doing a lot of number crunching at the back to give you this information. And if you have a lot of history, this can slow down the system. So just use with caution. And then if I click on the other icon over here, that's the detailed report. It will show me almost like an Excel view with all the instances of that process. And if you scroll to the right, each attribute on the process will be listed as a column. So this is a full export of all the raw data that you get on your processes, which you can then use, for analytics or just general review, or for your own personal reporting purposes. So those are some of the standard reports you can access from the interface. We also have an API that people can use to pull information from WorkPool in real time. So this is useful if you have a different system that's perhaps tracking and monitoring. We will generally help people to build this. I mean, you could actually use AI to create the structure, but in most cases, we'll assist you with this. And then you can call that address from your system at any point in time, extract the data and use that. So this one was actually a shipping process where in a different system, they had a Python script that would check and pull data from WorkPool. It would be able to trigger shipping notifications for their logistics team. So any data that's in WorkPool, not just process dependent, but you can even link this up with view data. You can also expose electronically to other people. Just with the rise of AI, be very careful, because we've seen a few people who maybe not intentionally, but accidentally has broken the POPIA rules, and you need to be very careful that whatever you do, you don't inadvertently give away your data, or that you don't get into a difficult legal situation. So with those options, it typically happens that the client will say, that's great, but I've got an Excel document that I like, and I would like this report in that format, please, because I'm used to it. So we often get requests for many different reasons where they say, what I've got, can you give it to me in this format? It might be that I need a real-time register. It might be that management is asking me questions and I want to say, you go look, you can answer this question yourself. It might be that I need to export data or provide data for analytics purposes or data warehouse. And then also just for real-time operations. They're struggling to keep all the bits and pieces together, and they would like a report that can show that to them. So I'm going to show you just examples of some of these. Obviously, you would need to apply it to your own environment. One of the typical patterns we would see is one where you have a process. In this case, it's an HR process where the bookkeeper or the HR team can pull a report every month and say, given this person for a certain period of time, which could be 6 months or 3 years or in total, show me all the times that they were absent from work. And it can then do a lot of calculations, add things up, and what they would normally have to then look at, calculate, and act as a trigger on. WorkPool can actually tell them, but look, if this person has gone with been off sick for more than X amount of time, then actually, that counts as a different type of leave, etc. So it's a very simple report. It looks at a process, will give you certain filters, and based on that can even make assumptions and guide people accordingly. So that's a fairly common pattern, irrespective of the process. For registers, people who have whatever cancellations, new business, security, or other registers, a common request is to have that visible on WorkPool, where the data can be pulled in and visible for their compliance officer or any other person in real time. So the benefit here is that you can click and drill down on the actual case, the actual details. You have your metrics that you would typically have in your Excel document or in your register that's visible. And you can print and obviously send that on to the person if they don't have access to WorkPool. And what we found is that having a live register actually means that the people firstly understand the significance of the register because they can see it, they've got access to it, and they will then take the actions to make sure that it gets onto the register. So there's no need for someone to actually maintain it. They can check it out themselves, and it works. So just generally having that visibility, having it available in real time, means that people are actually getting the job done. And business can reduce the amount of time and effort around maintaining that. Another typical example would be where a client wants us to combine information from the directory with processes or processes with the directory. So it could be that they maybe have a client relationship manager or someone assigned to a certain group of clients. It might be that they want to filter out active versus inactive, whether it's products or clients. In this case, it's for an accountant or an auditor, looking at a certain year end, and then be able to pull all the clients, see what's happening, look at any special exemptions or exceptions, and then annual fees, which the work in progress department can use to send the partner an update, or can use this in terms of planning. And obviously it's in real time, so they don't need to maintain a separate spreadsheet or report or go look at someone's workflow and then filter it accordingly. This report, although it looks simple, does a lot of stuff in the back end and brings that all together. And again, it might look simple, but we've had some clients who spend 3 days a month on reporting so that they're ready for the first of the month. And then by that point in time, they've lost 3 days of data or it's inaccurate. So having the visibility ensures the quality and also the timeliest action on any of those tasks and processes. Let me just see. Yep, something that you can also do and that we've seen is that these could be automated so that WorkPool can actually pull the report weekly or monthly in the back end and then email this to the parties concerned. So irrespective of the content here, if you don't want someone to have to go pull it, look at it and send it, that's more time and effort that you can save as well. This was an interesting one where the client was using WorkPool for many purchase contracts and sales contracts, and then also for shipping. So here, everything with an S number is a sales contract. Everything with an SH is a shipment. And they could at a glance look at their funnel and see exactly what's on the water, what their commitment is in terms of what they've purchased from the suppliers, and then also the expected income that they would get. And this is a multi-currency solution where these are converted to their base currency, which was dollars. So lots of places you can do this. And we've had lots of interesting cases. I can't mention or show all of them to you, but even in manufacturing where people have actually put up TV screens in the coffee section where if the directors walk in, they can drink their coffee and they can have a look at what's going on the screen. And if there's any problem or escalation or something turning red, they can actually go walk and look at the problem and sort it out there and then. So that visibility and the real-time access can add a lot of value. I'm going very quickly because I've got a lot of content, so hopefully you can keep up or you can watch it in slow-mo afterwards. Right, jumping in on the examples of processes in action. I'm also going to be chatting about some of the AI options and agents that you can use to automate some of these things at the end. So yeah, just bear that in mind as well. I thought one of the useful processes that we use internally is a verification one. So for us, it's new employees, but for you, it could be like a FICA check or for new clients. We're making use of the beeswax service from Lemonade. And we start the process. We put in name and surname and ID number or passport number. It does a real-time check against Home Affairs. Will then either succeed or not. And based on that, you can choose to proceed further to get sub-C results, PEP, and also proceed to do a bank verification. So how it works, you kick off the process, you fill in the name and surname, and then either ID number or passport, and that will then pull by the back end the data from the Home Affairs office directly. We actually store the electronic report, the source file on the process so that you can use that data for other purposes as well. It will pull in and auto-populate all these fields. So when the ID was issued, if it's got a photo, it even pulls that photo from Home Affairs and attaches that to the process and any other details that you might find there. Then on step 2, you can say, in this specific case, I'd like to do a sub-C, PEP, and bank verification. If you tick those boxes, WorkPool then connects again, and in parallel, we'll then go out and pull this data from different endpoints and collate a report, again, giving you the source data, so you have your proof and your audit trail. And some of these can then be used to proceed further. So I can see that Lionel Atkins here is a member and a director on 2 companies. I have the registration number here, so I can then actually do subsequent calls to then also do a sub-C check on these companies from there. So yeah, it takes a few seconds, all the data comes through. Similarly for PEP and for bank account details, it goes down to a level of even checking the names, the account type, whether the account is open, etc. And all of these need to pass before payments can be approved for that client. So all you need here is the subscription for beeswax, or if you have your own identity verification system, these scripts can be updated to perform those checks in a similar fashion. Quick tip for those who don't know, you can move processes between folders. We've had a few clients who stop a process and then restart it in another one. There is a icon on the process summary screen. If you click on that, and it gives you a 4-step wizard where you can actually move a process and all the emails and activities and documents with it into another folder. So in case you didn't know. Here's an example of a client who had a need to re-sign a mandate with, I think, 200 or 300 of their clients. They used a WorkPool report where they could pull all the clients that matched that criteria, and they click to add a task. These would then kick off processes in bulk, so you might have 200 or 300 processes, and they used the detailed report that I showed you earlier on to export that into Excel. From Excel, they imported that into QuicklySign with all the details like the email address, the name, and the variables that they needed, and all the emails went out to the clients. The clients would then log in and do the signature. They don't have access to WorkPool. And when the email came back into WorkPool, we had a mailbox rule processor that could identify the task, link the email to the task, link it to the folder, detach the document, and push it into the binders section, and ultimately wrap up the administration automatically. So you can imagine if there were 300 clients, 80% of them did the signatures online, you reduced your work significantly and you only had to focus on whatever was remaining. So a simple solution using 2 different technologies, but using WorkPool to connect the dots and ultimately saving it into the client's folder with your proof in the system. Some of you have asked us how we do our monthly billing. So here's one example of a custom report working with our debit order facility. So every month a task kicks off, a process, sorry, and there's 2 checks. It will just allow you to finalize any pending actions, and then it will give you a preview of the batch that's going to be submitted in case there are variables or changes you have to make. And if both of these have been completed, it automatically submits that to the payment gateway. We have a billing view on WorkPool that determines and dictates what gets billed where and how. So from this billing view, it creates a report, which is that second task in the process. And the nice thing is that every individual line item we can categorize and link it to the accounting code. So by the time we push this into the financial system, everything is perfectly coded already, and it just saves a lot of time in terms of doing that. So we tick those boxes, complete the tasks, it gets submitted. There's a few actions that take place, some of them automatic, some by humans, and then there's a file that gets generated from that, which we then push into Xero, and that generates the invoices. Those invoices actually come into WorkPool, and then from WorkPool they're sent out to clients so that we have no dependency on the financial system to keep documents for us. So that's an example of an advanced or script trigger working with some automation and a process overlay. On that note, process overlays, we've had a few cases where people are perhaps migrating from an existing checklist or Excel document or way of working, and to help the staff navigate that change, they wanted to look the same in WorkPool. We've had cases where when people start a process, there's a bit of logic and thinking that they need to do, and we want to not just when they started, but also on the process itself, perhaps pull information from other sources to make their lives easier. And then also in terms of just fraud prevention, certification, locking down your data where, if you're a certification authority, it's happened where people doing freelancing work might be using your details to issue certificates and get paid on the side, where if they actually have to generate it through WorkPool, there's no way for them to circumvent that. And then ultimately just to consolidate the information. So when you're looking at 4, 5, 6 different processes, you often want a cover sheet that will just pull everything that you need to know into one place. So here's one example of a claims checklist. At the back, you have a normal WorkPool process. The claims handler can edit some of the information on the screen, and they can even click a button to pull information live from the policy administration system and have that visible as part of their transaction and part of their normal way of working. Depending on the actions and their decisions, they can kick off different actions from here, which just puts them back in control, but it also means they don't have to manually go start tasks in the back end. So they've got one essentially case cover sheet, which all the information is stored on, that they can act from, and they don't have to go dive into sub-processes. And if you scroll down, what they've done here is that these blocks are actually tasks on the process. So there's claim registration, there's follow-up and getting information. It will show you when it was completed and the task numbers. So at the back, you've got the normal WorkPool process, and the process or operations team can make changes, add more tasks, add more attributes, put in new rules, and all the users need to do is work from this checklist. So it's almost invisible to them, but it's a nice way to consolidate all the data. And then at the bottom, there's a history of all the activities that's been taken. And this goes through all the subtasks and all the sub-processes and brings it up into one view. So quite a nice solution in terms of getting a single view that's connecting a lot of dots for people. This is an example of a purchase contract with a very, very simple back-end process, but with a lot of attributes. In this case, it can get quite complicated when they place an order with a supplier that they might need to ship things in different shipments. And with WorkPool, they can control everything up to the level of what the packing list and what the order composition is from the screen. And they also have some special icons at the top that they can use to generate things like purchase contracts, update the status, indicate when a shipment is ready, and that all feeds through to the dashboard that the management team will have a look at. So simple back-end process, nice, colorful, but also complicated front end to allow business to do the things that only they know how to do. So obviously let your mind go. In your business, there might be different applications for this, and it's often a good way to bridge the gap between people who are not as technical or don't want to understand many of the WorkPool structures. They can use this cover sheet as a way to work around that. Another pattern that we've seen is people using special start screens. So instead of just using the normal start task screen, they use a custom one that will do a bit of magic before it gets the process started. It's useful to manage complexity. So when there's a lot of things to consider, or you actually want to start the right process with certain of the attributes pre-populated, it could be that you have multiple branches and you want to allow brokers or advisors or salespeople to interact and submit things, but without having access to all the details or having to think too much. It could be that maybe the salesperson can create new clients on the system, which is automatically ring-fenced and put into the correct business unit so that they don't need access to the directory, for example. To do real-time system integration so that you can look up from your finance or policy admin or other system any details like account codes and things before you start it, and then often to prevent duplication. So if you're dealing with, let's say, quotations that when a client phones in, you can see, but we did a quote for them a week ago. So is this the same thing? Is it something else? So on this custom screen, the receptionist can actually take a phone call, type in the name and surname or a phone number. It comes up with the match in the database, in the directory of that client. If they do exist, you can then have a look and see, but are you Mr. Marius Puerta? Yes, from this, okay. We can see you've got a quote. Would you like us to reactivate that or start a new one? Or it could be that they can on the fly create a new record, and then it passes on all the necessary information to the sales team, like the color, the type of property and things that they would need to know and ask for anyway. So you don't need to train them to do the sales bit, but you can train them to fill in the form, and it just increases the quality substantially. This is an example of a client who they didn't have a website developer, they had a static website, and we actually embedded a form on their website that was pulled from WorkPool. So it looks like a form that's on their system and their background and their styles, but it actually was a link to WorkPool, and people could apply for a loan where they would put in their details and then actually upload their financial statements and things directly onto the system. So there's no emails or interception of that information, and well, obviously worked quite well. With security changes these days, it's getting a bit more difficult to embed frames like this into websites, but it was a cool solution to a complex problem. And here's one where multiple branches, let's say brokers or broker assistants, can actually request a quotation. And it looks simple. It kind of looks, what's the value? Why would you want to do this? But in their case, they had brokers or assistants sending emails to different people, not putting in the bare essentials in terms of what they wanted, what they were asking for. You often had to go and confirm the client again afterwards. So by breaking it down to the bare essentials and saying, if you want a quote, no problem, click, fill in the form, tell us what you want and submit request. It removed the need for emails. It was in real time, so this task would immediately pop up on the underwriting side, and they could even implement load balancing so that these tasks could be routed automatically to the correct person, either by insurer or by actual workload that they've got there. So small thing, it took a few hours to build, major difference in terms of the impact on business. Here's an example of like a claim registration start screen, where you can look up the client from within WorkPool, specify the type of event, the date of loss. We do a real-time lookup against the database, the policy admin system at the back, and can pull in details like the contact details, excuse me, name and surname, and ask the correct questions. So the claims handler can then, when they submit this, make sure that the claim can flow the way it's supposed to flow. And the idea here was that looking at this information, you can confirm that while you're on the phone with the client. And when you hit submit, it can automatically send an SMS and an email to them in real time while they're on the phone to confirm that their claim has been logged with the information. So again, just a little bit of connecting the dots on one screen, giving you the benefit of things flowing quite nicely after that. Here is an example of where WorkPool is the system orchestrating and automating a lot of the actions. It looks quite complicated, and we obviously help the client to build this one. But the story is that they have a website where clients can go register and then create new accounts to trade. And the website ultimately will take that new account information, create a JSON file, which is just a text structure, and they would then push that into WorkPool. We will look at the contents. Based on that, we'll trigger a few options to say, who's the client, where they're from, what do they want to do, and we will collect from humans extra information. So, who's the branch that will be taking care of this client, who's the portfolio manager, for example. So these things are not visible, and the client wouldn't know, and the website wouldn't know. And sometimes you don't want to push this into the trading system if there's an obvious reason why this client shouldn't be allowed to trade. So having passed all of this, it will then get pushed into the trading system, and there's no need to copy and paste or recapture any data, because we can take what we've got, update and change it, and then push the final details directly into the trading system. And by doing it this way, you have full auditability, you've got full control, and it speeds things up a hell of a lot because you only get the people to focus on what they need to do and not to have to manage this entire process. Looking at some bespoke dashboards. So here, similar to the reports, we sometimes have a requirement where a lot of information needs to be pulled and consolidated for a specific audience or a specific role. Could be a compliance, could be a customer representative, or whatever that might be. It could be that you need early warnings in terms of any risks, or if there's SLAs applicable that you can see and take action before it's too late. General business reporting, as I mentioned, for many clients, they spend many hours a month, and it's worth spending 10 hours and paying for that once off and saving themselves 2 days every month. So business reporting, and very often these reports, especially now, can be used by agents. So instead of getting the agent to have to extract, collate, compare, check, the report can do that work, and you can get the agent to then take action based on that information. It's also a way to give access to information and reduce communication. So if you have maybe external parties that you work with, you can give them a way to track and see what's going on without them needing to dive too deep or getting access to your WorkPool itself. And then just generally to simplify things and give context where possible. So quite useful for ops, for projects, and just generally reducing the communication. So here's one example of a bespoke dashboard where each one of these tiles will give you a summary of different, the state of different processes. You can click on them and then drill down into each tile to see what the workflow or the backing is around that and how you get to these numbers. So that was quite useful because each department could focus on their tiles. And whenever there was an ops meeting or even a monthly meeting, they could log into the system in real time and then see and chase whatever business they were going to focus on for that week or that month. Here's another example of a bespoke dashboard for brokers where this is a short-term administration company where they're performing quite a bit of admin in terms of claims and underwriting work, and they want to evidence the work that they're doing for their clients, which essentially are brokers, and they want to be able to allow the broker real-time access to see what's happening, show how many policies they might be having under administration, what the premiums are, have visibility in terms of the work around the renewals, a bit of CRM, giving them information in terms of their clients' birthdays upcoming in the next 8 days. And we've even, one can add other bits and pieces here as well, like any specific actions that they might need to take or actions, tasks they might need to review that's waiting on them. Using the buttons at the top, they can then click and drill down to see more information. So in this case, the broker can see based on their book, based on their portfolio, how many new claims came in over the last 7 days, how many claims were handled or completed in the last 7 days. They can click and then drill down on those. Then so to any existing claims that might be active, they can click, they can open, and they can go find out without having to ask the assistant or the administrator or having to send more emails. They've got visibility on this information in real time. So dashboards can be very useful, can save a lot of time and connect a lot of dots for you. In terms of the document generation capabilities, here too useful for bulk actions. You can apply it in your environment. The one I'm showing you here is around, let's say, an HR process where once a year there's an increase due, and the HR team would prepare a spreadsheet that they would get signed off on from business. And using this, they would then save it into Excel. In Excel, we have a form that we can then pull in that information, and WorkPool will then automatically match the employees based on either the payroll number or ID number or whatever the unique identifier would be. And if they're happy with this, if the matched values are correct, they can click submit, and that then kicks off all those processes. We generally allow for 2 ways. Either the line managers can then have a final review and preview any letters that might go out, or if the line managers have already signed off, then HR can go in, pull the report, and they can then individually accept or reject. They can preview what the letter will look like. So you might not see it here, but we automatically populate the current and the new total cost to company. If there were bonuses, it might be a different letter that will be kicked off. And then we pull in the electronic signature from the line manager or the person who's authorized based on the template. So if they're happy, they click on approve. And that actually performs a lot of actions in the back end. So approve means firstly update the HR record on the payroll side with the new salary. We automatically encrypt that PDF that we generate using the password that is pulled from the HR profile. So it could be the ID number or cell phone number. We generate an email that gets sent to their personal email address. We attach the encrypted PDF, and that is linked to the task and also linked in the folder. And then that same encrypted document gets pushed into the binder section under the HR binder to have a record of the letter that was created and sent out. So you can imagine, if this is 200 people or 300 or 500, the amount of time saved and the automation and the reduction in errors of people, having to encrypt or perhaps things going out to the wrong people because you have those checks and balances in place. So give that some thought. If that's something that can work for you, maybe for clients, give us a shout. In terms of web form campaigns, a few examples. I'm going to show you just one for the principle of a training academy. So we have a client where they have staff where the staff need to be accredited or certified, to give advice or perform certain functions. So what they've done is they pull from WorkPool the different types of resources and their designations. They can determine based on the certifications they've done already or the level, what type of course they need to do. And when they hit that off, WorkPool sends a lot of emails with web form links to the users. They would then click on that. They would get their quiz in a web form format. It's obviously multiple choice in this case. And depending on them passing that test successfully, WorkPool automatically generates a PDF certificate with their name and the course and all the details with the date. It signs it based on the authority linked to that, and then automatically updates the qualifications on the HR record as well with that certificate, and can push that through to the document section again under compliance or training or whatever the case might be. So that means, if you have a large group of people, or you can use and reuse the same process to actually take on a lot of the admin that would need to be done manually. So another good example of combination of automation, bulk processing, and web forms. We have several, interesting uses of web forms and custom web forms. I'm only going to show you one here. In this case, we had a situation where clients would apply for a carrier account application, having passed all the different checks, like FICA checks and so on. Ultimately, it goes to a credit committee to review and say whether they're going to approve that or not. When it hits this point, you can see some green blocks, so there's triggers attached to it. WorkPool automatically generates an email with a voting button. It also provides them with the source details that they need to review. They click on the vote button, they get a nicely formatted application screen, and this is pulled directly from the content on the process, and this user can then approve, amend, or reject the application directly. So keep in mind, these are not people who have access to WorkPool. These are external parties. Depending on their actions over here, either the process will proceed if they all approve, or the representatives approve. If they reject, WorkPool automatically stops and then either would need to reapply or can take action, and they record their name and email address here as well. We do have other checks in place that you just can't be any person who types this in, but an interesting situation where we had to deal with people who are external to WorkPool and allow the process to flow quite nicely. Right, we've got 15 minutes left. I thought I'll just also bring it together again on a different level by telling you a story of one of the clients. I've showed you some of the screens already here, who made a decision to standardize their operations on WorkPool as their business management platform. And they took a lot of the intellectual property that they had and put it using bespoke development on top of WorkPool where they could control it. So basically it was an existing company, and they had new investors, and these investors had the plan to disrupt a certain industry and have a new way of doing business. And they basically had 5 geographical locations from Cape Town to the UK, Denmark, Mauritius, and Gabon. And they needed to connect it. They were drowning in spreadsheets. They had an Access database. They had multiple financial systems, and it just wasn't working for them. So they took WorkPool and they said, look, how can we make sure that the work and the thinking that the traders are doing in terms of buying and selling and getting all of these things together, because they're going to retire soon and we need new blood to come into the business. So we want to empower them with the tools to continue running the business and basically grow the turnover significantly in a short space of time. So they used this concept of having an operations dashboard, looking at the tiles. All of these things were driven with just 3 processes, and they are very simple processes. They would purchase stock or secure stock, so they were buying wood in this case, could be from anywhere in the world, not just their own facility. They would have traders looking at the sales side, so what have we got, or what can we source, or we have a client looking for X, where can we find it? So either one could start the process, and then should there be a match or they want to strike a deal, they would have a shipping or combination of shipping and documentation process, which would then facilitate that. So literally, as you can see, a few simple tasks, a few simple blocks, but with a lot of attributes and steps that was happening in the mind of the traders, which they had to reduce to get to a point that they could manage that on WorkPool. The one bespoke screen that we created for them was a trade calculator. So in the past, the traders would either do this in their head or use Excel. So it allowed them to take what they've bought and then change things, convert it to a different currency in different dimensions, let's say from feet into meters or whatever it might be. And then we also pulled the exchange rate daily from the primary financial system. So whatever they were working on here, they could see what the knock-on effect would be for buying things in dollars and selling them in euros. And we would give them a running total, considering all the costs, any additional sales commission and things that they would need to pay. And this would then be the trade, the deal that they would sign and approve and would be executed then by the admin team. So on the left, you have your purchase contract. On the right, you've got your sales contract. And in WorkPool, you had the blue, which is the purchase contract, and the green, which was the sales contract. So these are just overlays. I mentioned the one before already, where it just pulled everything together. They used to have a cover sheet for every deal that they would print every morning with the updated details. So this replaced that completely. Anyone could go in, could look and see what is where. It is a very manual type of business where things can happen. The ship might not arrive, the containers might not be ready. So for them having the screen, the people could act accordingly. And we could then also from here prep things like the packing lists for the containers. We could choose the shipping company, and from that, in terms of the delivery, be able to manage that. And one of the cool things was in doing this, they could completely separate the contact between the sellers and the suppliers and the clients. So the clients would never know the supplier, and the supplier would never know the destination of what they've sold, so that this company could obviously source it from anywhere and could maintain that relationship with both sides. So that's an example of combining just processes with these overlays. And then they had, as I mentioned, special icons and buttons which they could use to even generate their purchase contracts and sales contracts. And from here, it actually led into WorkPool ending up with the factory, where I think this is on the port, where they were all French speaking, and they had to find a way for these people to basically document and track and control the containers and the shipments. So all they did was they log in every morning and they focused on this one screen, and they could do the work and automatically move things into the different funnels as things would progress. So there's a lot of examples. We built this up over 4 years for them. You know, once you do something, you learn from it, you improve, and you proceed from there. And basically, finance was happy, the investors were happy because they could see where's the money going, have we sold anything, when can we expect the money to come in, so we can use that for purchasing more wood in the back end. So very useful. And again, real time, I mean, you don't often get that visibility in terms of being able to see what's happening. And also to drill in and look at exceptions and say, but why, how can we have a locked trade, a successful contract where there's no value attached to it? So dive in, go check and see what's cooking. How can there be a customer and supplier who we've connected, but it's 1,500 days and nothing's happened here? So go look, go check and see what the issue might be. So why am I telling you all of this? The client made a decision to obviously protect the intellectual property and put it into a system that they could own. And what they did, which was because they're a publicly trading company, got an external auditor to then go look and see, well, what is this value? I mean, if this was an asset on a balance sheet, you know, what would it mean? They sourced, I think it was a European technology company who looked and said, okay, you'll need a database, you'll need CRM, you'll need workflow, you'll need consulting, you'll need all of these different things. And they came back and they said that the value that they think this is $136.2 million US. And we said, no, we argued against that to say, but we know what we've put in the time and effort, and it's great and wonderful, and we pat ourselves on the back, but we ultimately argued them down to, I think it was 36 million US. So this company spending not a lot of money on development, building it up over 4 years, you know, had a significantly more valuable business that they could then sell and obviously use this for other purposes. If they did this using AI or AI agents, they wouldn't have a business to sell because that property and that IP would be sitting with someone else. If that company cuts off that channel, then they're stuck unless they've taken the proper precautions. So if you're planning on selling your business or you have unique ideas or things that you want to implement, then combining the WorkPool management platform with that can obviously give you a superior solution. So we like AI, we love AI. It's one of the most significant events, I think, in the IT industry for many years. And I don't want you to think that we don't support or don't appreciate that. We're happy for clients to use agents and LLMs as long as they do so securely and as long as they do so intelligently. They tick all the boxes and chat to their compliance officers. We've seen already people making mistakes and breaking, cross-border rules and things like that. If you don't know, then you need to ask and you need to look deeper and ideally get your compliance officer to investigate and check the boxes as well. I think our approach or our strategy here is that we want to make sure that you remain the owner of your data, that you remain in control of your data, that you have one place that you can go to where all of your data and structures are governed, defined, and audited, and you can control the permissions that people have. Agents can come and go. There's better ones on the market every day. So you want to be able to have the flexibility where you've got your pot of data, your rules, your way of working, and you can use that the way that you want too. So it's basically using WorkPool as the orchestration layer that agents can manage the work through, but not around. So you still need that visibility and that control, and WorkPool ultimately can be your system of work and your system of record, which combines what the humans do and the agents in one. And ultimately, as I said, we want you to be the beneficiaries of the work that you do, and WorkPool, gives you that protection. And for many of these screens that you've seen today, they're not that expensive. Yes, maybe it's 4 hours, maybe it's 10 hours, maybe it's even 100 hours, but that 100 hours saves you 20 hours per month, and you pay that off within 5 months. So you have to look at it intelligently and say, would I rather want to pay for something once off, get the development done, make sure it works consistently and that I own it? Or do I want to expose myself and say, okay, there's this variable amount in terms of an agent that could cost X today and 8X tomorrow that might be there or might not be there. You need to just make sound business decisions and don't rush into something when you haven't checked all the boxes. So I think just keep that in mind and consider that ultimately you don't want all your hard work and all your effort to be for nothing and hand it over to someone else to just continue from there. Right. Actually made it 4 minutes early. Lots of content. Obviously, we'll put this on YouTube for you to look at. If there was any specific example that made sense or that you might want to explore, you can obviously refer to the screens and perhaps use it as an example to chat internally, and then also get in contact with the support guys if you have any questions.